Over the last 5 in a couple of months, I've worked at the same company, which within the tech space is not so common and yet still pretty common among software engineers. And in this video, I'm going to share the lessons and reasons why I could probably do more here. So stay to the end. So firstly, I've had the opportunity to see the impact of the decisions I've made. So my day job, I'm a software engineer, and software engineering is essentially about making decisions with trade-offs. So it's essentially about trade-offs. So we have constraints and we need to make decisions based on those constraints and watch out to see the outcomes of our decisions, of our processes. And in times where the outcome of these decisions are positive, we ensure that we pay attention to the processes that led to that outcome and ensure we promote those processes or those frameworks within the organization. But in times where they're negative, the first response is to try our best to mitigate it and then write documentations to ensure that we prevent recurrence. So essentially, as software engineers, every day we make trade-offs. By staying this long, I've had the opportunity to see the impact of the decisions I've made. I've also had the opportunity to see the impact of engineering decisions made by more experienced engineers and just engineers across the team. And I feel that job hopping might not necessarily provide this opportunity unless you're job hopping within the same industry in tech. So if you're job hopping within fintech, or you're job hopping within e-commerce, or job hopping within health tech, you might be able to get this experience because when you work at startup A in fintech at a particular stage and you go to the next startup, if they have very good documentation, you could probably be meeting the next startup at an earlier stage or at a more mature stage, and you can learn from their experience, and then you can see retroactively some of the decisions that you made at the previous startup and how they have unfolded in the new startup. However, I feel that within the same company, you have more ability to see the impact of your decision. But most of the senior engineers, most of the principal engineers and engineers I respect are engineers who have spent at least 5-6 years at specific companies within their career. So even though they've worked at 2 or 3 different companies, they've spent a decent amount of time at each of those companies and they have seen the impact of their decisions. So they've seen the impact of their design phase and they've built some form of intuition around making quality decisions. So they've gotten to a point where they can now intuitively know if a decision is probably going to lead the team down a negative path versus leading the team down a positive path. And that's really why I have stayed. And that's one of the things I have seen and I have learned in the past 5 years. I joined the company at Engineer 30 and we have grown bigger. I joined when we had a few customers and I'm now at a place where we are having millions of requests. I joined when the revenue impact of the company was a few $1,000s and at a place where the revenue impact of decisions we're making are a couple of millions and stuff like that. And going through that journey is an experience that a number of people might not have by job hopping, but by staying longer in a company, you can actually grow with the company and become better at making decisions. All right, so the second point is that I have seen the impact of business decisions. Now, this is similar to the first point, but I feel it needs to be spelled out. Our job as software engineers, your job as a UI designer, your job as a marketer or a product manager, whatever job you have in the tech space, depends on the quality of the product and the leadership team. Essentially, our safety net as 9-to-5ers or our safety net as techies is our ability to spot the right product and to spot the right team for the product and the right market for the product. Now, by staying this long, I have been able to see the effects and the impact of certain business decisions at different stages of the company. And I've seen the leadership team of my company survive and respond positively to changes in the global market dynamics. And I've picked good frameworks and first thinking principles for making good business decisions. And this is something that a number of people don't get the opportunity to learn because they consistently keep on job hopping. So they're always job hopping. And so they don't build the intuition to be able to spot or make good business decisions, which has two impacts. One is that they can probably be in a consistent loop of job hopping because they don't have the framework to be able to assess if the organization they're joining has competent business leaders or has some form of product market fit or even has a chance of getting product market fit. The other aspect is that within the organization you're in, even if they successfully find a good company, They have not built the required frameworks for them to be able to make the right decisions that would impact the business positively, because they lack the framework and the experience to see the impact of business decisions over a significant period of time. I have a number of things to say about lessons, but I think this is very important, and it's the fact that we work with people. More often than not, we underestimate the impact of the people we get to work with. For most of us, we spend 8 hours every day, 40 to like 50 hours every week working with our colleagues. And some of us don't have especially myself, some of us don't have the ability to have multiple personalities where you can have XYZ personality at work and have a different personality at home. So for some of us, we need to ensure that we are working within an organization, or we are working with the people that we genuinely want to work with. If you work in an organization where the people you're working with are not genuinely kind or don't know how to fake kindness within the organization, over time you tend to pick some of those habits, or you tend to be forced to have dual personality. So at work, you become that person that can work with unkind people and can do their level of office politics, where you're all being ambitious but yet still mischievous, setting traps for each other because you want to succeed. And then at home with your friends, you now have to ensure that you have that quality of a person where you're genuinely kind, where you care about people, where you're selfless, and where you're not just optimizing for yourself. And I'm not that kind of a person. And so in the past 5 years, one of the main reasons why I've stayed is that I have had the opportunity to work with genuinely kind people. I've had the opportunity to work with genuinely kind senior leadership teams. I've had the opportunity to work with genuinely kind colleagues and engineering managers. And this has not been at the expense of our ambition or at the expense of our productivity. I've had the opportunity to work within a leadership structure and a culture where my leadership team has shown me that you can still optimize for intense ambition, an engineering team, a product team that is focused on achieving their goals without compromising on kindness and empathy. And this is very essential because these are people I spend 1/3 of my life with, and my experience at work most definitely affects my experience outside work. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't said anything about compensation, and the reason is that I'm not in a phase of my career where I'm really optimizing for compensation. Now, and don't get me wrong, I get paid well. My leadership team in my organization tries their best to ensure that we get paid the right amount of money for the value we're contributing to the organization. So I don't really have an issue with that. But the point is that I'm not really optimizing for every 2 years, 20%, 30% increase in my compensation. And because I'm not at that career phase right now. And so I break my career into 3 high levels. So the first is my learning phase, and where I'm really optimizing for learning. The second phase is where I'm optimizing for being established, and that's where I'm getting myself more into that position of being a leader. I'm ensuring I'm setting a track record of people that I'm a career role model to, people that I'm inspiring, and I'm getting to a place where if I want to leave an organization, the senior leadership team of the organization would most likely have conversations with me to get me to stay. And so that's like the second part. And then the third part is where I'm now then optimizing for setting a legacy. And so that's probably where I'm optimizing to be a VP at a tech company. And I'm looking at doing extremely ambitious stuff where I'm optimizing to be the next under picture of my company, or I'm optimizing to be the next satire of my company and stuff. And right now I'm still in the second phase, which is where I am getting to a point where I am now trying to establish myself as a leader. And so I'm not really optimizing for compensation. I'm optimizing for the opportunity to learn. I'm optimizing for opportunity to show impact, and I'm optimizing for opportunity to be a role model within my organization and beyond my organization. So the first and most important thing for me is culture. And it's not necessarily a place where I'm cozy with my colleagues and stuff, but it's a place where my colleagues and the organization is ultra ambitious, yet not compromising on kindness and empathy. I want to work in an organization where there is a goal, where everybody's working hard, where everybody's excellent driven, where everybody's trying their best to build the best quality software for customers and trying their best to ensure that they're meeting a real revenue target. I want to work in an organization where the leadership team are revenue driven, and where every day I come to work and I'm working on a project, I can find a clear map between what I'm doing and the revenue impact on the organization. And I want to be in an organization where the leadership team is optimizing for revenue and still not compromising on kindness and empathy. I don't want to have a dual personality. I don't want to get burnt out because of my interactions with my colleagues. I want to be in a place where I wake up every day and I go to work excited to jump on the call with colleagues, excited to peer code with colleagues, because I'm working with people who are ultra ambitious, yet people are kind. Right, so the next thing I would consider is learning opportunities. Break this into 3 parts. 1, a growing business, colleagues as role models, and organizational buy-in. If you don't have a growing business where customers are using your products, where demands on your products are growing, you automatically have a ceiling to your growth. And depending on your stage in your career, which I guess you're still probably in the very early or mid stage in your career, if you're watching this, you should really optimize for a growing business, a business that is revenue oriented, and a business where the leadership team and the organization itself is competent and you're growing in the market. The next thing is colleagues as role models. Beyond the product which is growing, if you find yourself in an organization where you're the most experienced person or the most competent person and you're still at the early and mid stage of your career, then you should probably be considering going to another company, because you're already at a place where you've hit your own peak and you're no longer growing. I would say you should consider this. Now, the third thing is organizational buy-in. More often than not, the longer you stay in an organization, the more you can get the leadership team of the organization to invest in your learning. You might not necessarily get that 5%, 10% increments in compensation every year, but if you're in the learning phase in your career, you can get them to invest money in learning opportunities, in going to conferences and courses, and you can probably get them to even give you time off to learn. You can get them to even switch you across the team just to gather knowledge. And especially if you are in the learning phase of your career, this is way more important than 10%, 5% increments in your compensation by job hopping, because you can get the opportunity to stay within the organization and build the level of competence you need to get that 20%, 50%, 70% increase in compensation within the organization or outside the organization. And finally, the one thing you're thinking of, compensation. Now, compensation can be a deal breaker for most people depending on where they are in their career and depending on where you are in your life situation. But my framework for this is that if you're not earning less than 20% of what you can get from the market and your current organization ticks most of the things you want from an organization, then you probably shouldn't be looking outside your current organization. Feel that any pay disparity that's still within the 10-15% range shows that you still have learning opportunities within the organization. My general rule of thumb is that if a person is leaving the organization and they're still in the early mid stage of their career, then they probably should be optimizing for a 30-40% increase in compensation. And so if you can't really get that, it means that you're still in a good place and you're still in a good position where there are enough opportunities to learn. And especially if your organization ticks most of your box for the kind of company you want to work at. My name is Eric Bede. See you next time.